Hello, and welcome to the Cognitive Edge, where teachers, librarians, educational leaders, and technology professionals come together to examine the ideas shaping the future of learning. I am Dr. Daniel A. Sabol, your host, and today we're going to be discussing a newer form of artificial intelligence that may eventually influence education more deeply than, say, chatbots or automated tutoring programs or AI generated lesson plans. And that is called ambient artificial intelligence or ambient AI. When most people think about artificial intelligence, they really imagine opening an application, typing a question, uploading a document, or giving a direct command. Um, you ask your system to write you something, or you ask it to summarize a particular piece of work for you. You ask it to explain a difficult idea, or the interaction is visible. You know when the artificial intelligence is operating because you intentionally turned it on, basically. Um, Ambient AI is a little bit different. Um, Ambient AI works quietly in the background. It uses information from the surrounding environment to understand what may be happening and determine whether assistance is needed or not. It might use microphones and cameras and sensors, connected devices, learning platforms, schedules, location information, or patterns of activity. Instead of waiting for a person to type a prompt, ambient AI observes context. Um, it attempts to anticipate needs, basically, is what it's doing. And it may adjust the environment recommended upon the action, the prepare documentation, the provide accessibility support, or alert a professional to something that requires attention. In other words, the technology begins to disappear into the environment. So imagine entering a classroom where the lighting automatically adjusts for students with visual or sensory needs, um, because it knows that this room is set up for that. Captions, they appear when someone begins thinking or begins speaking. That's like quiet or whatever. Important directions are translated for multilingual learners. The teacher received a quiet notification that several students appear to be struggling with the same concept. The room recognizes that the noise level is becoming disruptive and makes a gentle environmental adjustment. Notes from the lesson are organized automatically. Um, Accessibility tools activate without requiring a student to publicly request them. Um, a school librarian begins a research lesson, and the system quietly prepares links, vocabulary support, source evaluation prompts, and citation assistance based upon the assignment that is at hand. No one stops the lesson to configure each individual tool. The environment itself seems to respond to stimulus. Um, and that may sound efficient and it may sound accessible, um, and it may sound personalized and even supportive. When you think about it, this has a lot of potential, but it also sounds like surveillance or, you know, ambient AI could reduce barriers and administrative work. It could also create environments in which students, teachers, and library users are constantly observed, interpreted, scored, and recorded. The real question is whether ambient AI will enter education. It already is piece by piece. But the important question is whether educators, librarians, families, and students will be allowed to shape the boundaries before this technology becomes so normal that we stop noticing it. Um, so let's swing back to something I started in the beginning, but I'll do again. Um, what exactly is ambient AI? Ambient AI is part of a broader movement towards intelligent environments. It combines artificial intelligence with devices and systems that collect information about what is happening in a particular space. Um, these systems may analyze sound or movement or language or temperature, um, device activities, schedules, attendance, patterns of behavior, or interactions with digital resources. The system then attempts to determine whether some form of response is appropriate. Um, a traditional piece of educational technology waits for a command. Ambient technology watches for context. Um, a really traditional learning platform might wait for a student to click on an assignment. An ambient system might notice that the student has returned to the same question several times, spent an unusually long time on one step, or stopped interacting with the material. And the system also might then recommend a hint or offer an alternative explanation, alert the teachers, or suggest another resource possibly. That difference is significant. Generative AI responds to what we ask, and ambient AI may respond to what it believes is happening. Um, that creates it's a serious challenge. Um, the system is simply not processing information. It's interpreting human behavior. And once technology begins interrupting it, um, we really have to ask who defined the meaning of that behavior. Um, what does confusion look like? What does the engagement look like? Um, what does anxiety look like in each and every student? That's a lot. What does productive struggle look like? What does boredom look like? Um, what does deep thinking look like? These questions, they sound simple until we really try to turn them into data. A student who looks away from the teacher may be distracted. Um, that same student may also be thinking deeply. Um, we can't make that draw just by an observation. A student who moves frequently may be restless. The student may also have a disability or a sensory need or a different way of concentrating. A student who remains quiet during a discussion may not understand the lesson. Now, these are all assumptions, remember. Some students may also be carefully processing a conversation before speaking. Human beings, we are complicated, and the machines that are being built are often more complicated. Ambient systems are often built around the idea that complicated behavior can be transformed into somewhat of a measurable signal. Sometimes these signals can be useful, sometimes not. Sometimes they can be dangerously misleading. Um, and you have to be very careful about what you're looking at and how you're using it. Some people are asking why ambient AI is becoming attractive. Ambient AI is becoming attractive because many professionals are overwhelmed by technology rather than helped by it. Teachers are expected to use learning management systems, assessment platforms, communication tools, and attendance systems, intervention records, grading programs, student information systems, and digital curriculum resources. Um, Librarians, they manage catalogs, databases, digital collections, circulation systems, instructional material, technology equipment, research platforms, community programs, and reporting requirements. Um, so there are a lot of metrics in both places. So, in theory, technology is supposed to reduce the work. Okay. But in practice, technology often creates additional layers of work. Um, Professionals, they spend their days moving information from one system into another. Um, you know, this is how it goes. The same um, happens, and they enter the same information multiple times. The document They document everything, what they thought, who participated, what support it was provided, what intervention was attempted, and what should happen next. Ambient AI offers a tempting promise. It says that the technology can handle some of this work automatically. Um, In some healthcare settings, ambient AI systems already listen during approved clinical conversations and prepare draft notes for a healthcare professional to review. The goal is to allow the professional to focus on the patient rather than the computer. Now, imagine that model in education. A teacher leads a discussion while an approved system prepares a draft lesson summary. A librarian could conduct a research consultation while the system creates a list of recommended resources. Um, a professional development session could um, automatically be captioned or translated or summarized and organized into follow-up tasks. A school team holds a meeting while the technology prepare a preliminary record of decisions, responsibilities, and deadlines. The potential benefit is definitely clear. Um, the professional may be able to spend less time typing and more time listening. And that's kind of how it goes. But there's a catch as well. Same system that reduces paperwork must first capture the conversation. It must process the information, um, and it may store the information. So it may send the information to a vendor system or point of sale system or who knows. It may use the information to improve a commercial product. It may understand what was said, or it may misunderstand what was said as well. It goes both ways. It may create a record that follows a student, employee, or library user for years. Um, the promise of efficiency cannot be separated from the question of data collection. The ambient classroom and the idea lets us imagine a future classroom using ambient AI responsibly. Students enter the room and environmental sensors adjust the lighting and temperature. And um, these adjustments, they're based on the room's conditions rather than detailed personal profiles. The teacher begins speaking and captions appear automatically. Now, these would be on boards that would be around the room. A student can choose to receive translated instruction. Another student activates text to speech without having to announce the need to the entire class. Um, and these could be little desk or models that are on their desk already or whatever the case may be. During a lesson, the teacher asks students to solve a problem. The ambient system does not attempt to grade every facial expression or body movement. Instead, what it does is it analyzes voluntary responses submitted through the devices that are put in the classroom or throughout the classroom. It notices that many students are making the same mistakes. The system quietly informs the teacher that the class may need another example. The teacher decides whether the recommendation is useful. So the system is talking to the teacher. This is an important distinction. Artificial intelligence also identifies patterns. The teacher interprets the pattern, and then the system assists, um, kind of in that three-way motion. And then ultimately, and last but not least, the human decides because that's what it has to come to. Now, imagine the irresponsible version. Cameras continuously monitor every student. Um, the system measures eye movement, posture, facial expression, speaking time, and body positioning. Um, each student receives an engagement score, and the teacher's told which students appear attentive and which students appear disengaged. Um, Administrators receive a dashboard comparing classrooms, and parents receive automated reports of, um, you know, how things are going. Students begin adjusting their behavior to look engaged rather than becoming genuinely engaged. Quiet students are scored lower. Students with disabilities are misunderstood. Um, Students, they experience higher anxiety, and it, the system that's implemented, they are treated as suspicious. Teachers, they feel pressure to design lessons that produce attractive data rather than meaningful learning. The technology has not improved education as of yet. Um, it has turned the classroom into a performance for an algorithm if you're um, doing the same thing over and over, but that is dangerous too. When a system measures what's easy to observe, institutions may begin valuing what is easy to measure. Education then becomes shaped by the limitations of the technology. Eye contact becomes evidence of attention. Speed becomes evidence of understanding. You know, stillness becomes evidence of self control. Participation becomes evidence of confidence. But these simple assumptions are not always true. Yes, they're beautiful to have measured and to be able to present them on a dashboard. It's great. But a student may solve a difficult problem slowly because the student is thinking carefully. But that student would still be considered going slow, or a student may avoid eye contact while listening closely, or another may move around because movement supports concentration. And a student may speak frequently without understanding the subject deeply because they want to appear as they know it when in fact they don't. A student may say very little and still produce remarkable work. Ambient AI must never be allowed to convert narrow behavioral assumptions into permanent education labels. Um, with that, um, letting technology into the classroom is okay as long as it's seen as something that's not dangerous to the students or to the teachers or to whomever it may be recording or whatever it's doing. But ambient AI, I think um, many newer teachers will undertake that and they'll start to play with those systems and see how they work. It's always great to give it a shot and to give it a try. So, but um, we'll end here. I am Dr. Daniel Sabol. Have a wonderful evening and a dry one because it's pouring out there. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Have a good night. Bye bye.